Hello?
Kasonso.
You're muted.
We live already.
Okay. Is the music playing? Oh, good.
Yeah, because we couldn't play the music because we're already live.
All right.
Yeah. Welcome to BakwetuTV, our viewers. We're sorry we had some technical issues. Yeah, so we played some music, and now we've got Dr. Kasonso in. Welcome to this Monday segment of BakwetuTV. It's called One-on-One with Dr. Kasonso, and today we'll be talking about the current issues in business and finances. We focus on Zambia. But our topic today will be on the issue of the currency fluctuations. And the question is, would the Kwacha survive. Dr. Kasonso, welcome to tonight's program.
Oh, thank you, sir. How are you today?
I'm okay, and you? Okay, before we go any further, we're just going to look at the business statistics. And at the close of business today, the US dollar to the Kwacha was buying at 18 Kwacha, 38 Ingwe, and selling at 18 Kwacha, 43 Ingwe. The British pound was buying at 25 Kwacha and 8 Ingwe, and selling at 25 Kwacha and 16 Ingwe. The euro was buying at 21 Kwacha and 25 Ingwe, and selling at 21 Kwacha and 32 Ingwe. The South African rand was buying at 1 Kwacha 19 Ingwe and selling at 1 Kwacha 20 Ingwe. There was a slight depreciation from the rates at the year end, but the Kwacha continues to weaken against the convertible currencies. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. Anything you want to say, Kasonso, before we go into the program?
No, well, thank you, viewers. Konsoko mule tambila twawelana lelo tulande kupa mashwe ya ndalama tulifia bwino, although we had a little hitch in terms of the connectivity between the UK and the US and Zambia and other parts of the world. We're carrying on with this topic to address economic development in the face of chronic currency exchange rate fluctuations. Can the Zambian currency ever become stable in the long run? Yeah, so we are going to share our thoughts on this very important topic. So we wanted to share this broadcast with your friends on Facebook, on YouTube, and everywhere, on every platform where people are viewing us. And we want this broadcast to be interactive. So the things we are talking about and the thoughts you have, please be willing to write them down and share that, and some questions you have and some contributions you want to make. We want to be able to read as much as possible today, and then comment on some of the things you're going to say or answer some questions. So welcome to this show, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, and our viewers, as usual, please start sending those stars. That's what makes BakwetuTV to survive. And you can also subscribe to become a BakwetuTV family member. It's only $4 a month and about £3.60. Zambia is roughly about 80 Kwacha, 75 Kwacha. So please start sending them those stars. Kasonso, the topic we're talking about today is a very important topic, in the sense that because those days, with Zambia, the traders were only big organizations. You know, most people had jobs, or they were working on the farm, or they were doing their local small businesses locally. But now we've got Zambians traveling all over to do business. Dubai, those who cannot afford to go to Dubai, they are going to Tanzania by Tazara, and some are going even by bus to South Africa, which takes about 24 hours. It's quite tiring. So Zambians are doing business. So and not only that, we import almost everything in Zambia. So which means the stability of the Kwacha is very, very important. And then the fluctuation of the Kwacha, I think, messes up everybody. And you and me, we know that even in accounting, we account for losses in foreign exchange. But Kasonso, I want you to explain it at a layman's level, because this matter affects some Zambians. So my first question, Kasonso, is that in general, Kasonso, Dr. Kasonso, what are the controllable factors that affect exchange rate in the global economy?
Thank you for that question. I've enjoyed the preamble that you used to that question, Mr. Chilufya. The fluctuations in the exchange rate affects everybody in the economy. It affects the investor, it affects the retailer, it affects the final consumer. The lack of stability in the currency is a serious economic problem. Even we accountants, we find it to be quite a headache. Although there are programs that can help us calculate what was there at the beginning of the month and stuff, but we now have to open accounts for accounting for losses, or if the fluctuations were relative and within a certain range, we can deal with that. Yeah, but first of all, let's establish the factors that are controllable within a people group or a country that will affect the exchange rate. So we're going to take them step by step, and there are 8 of them. And we're going to, the first one, rates of inflation. Inflation is the rate at which prices for commodities in an economy are changing. Changes in market inflation causes changes in currency exchange rate. A country with a lower inflation rate than another will see an appreciation in the value of its currency. The prices of goods and services increase at a slower rate where the inflation is low. The prices of goods and services increase at a slower rate where the rate of inflation is low. A country with a consistently lower inflation rate exhibits a rise in currency value, or a country with a higher inflation typically sees depreciation in its currency and is usually accompanied by higher interest rates. Imitengo yafe tuleshita ngaile iya pamulu ngaile kwera lyonse na currency exchange rate ila kwato bwafe na ile kwera imitengo ngaile bwela ko panshi na currency exchange rate ila chitashani ila bwela ko panshi. So echa number 1, mitengo tuleshita po efintu mu economy echta affect currency rates. Number 2 ni my interest rates. Ama interest rates ni yale ama rates apo tukongwele ndalama ngoba mukongole ndalama ku banki ba banki wale foku lya mushinga ili rate ili tukongwela po ndalama pantu ili ingili nga tulefo ku chitefintu mu economy tatu kwa tolu pia upfront. So tulabonfya ko ndalama shabene ero twaya chiteko tulefo aya so shia twapange ndalama twafunya mu ndalama shabene shashale twapanga na profit. So nomba ngatwa mkupange ndalama ndalama shabene twasango ko bati ndalama tupangire fe profit ili ngene ndalama shabene. So ngachako bati ama interest rates yaliko bwino na exchange rate ila bako bwino mu economy. So ama interest rates nga yali high sana tatulipanga profit mu economy nishi na exchange rate ya kuseshan yala kwelela ko yala yapa mu. Icha number 3, nindalama shasunge chalo ku Bank of Zambia. The country's current account balance of payments. A country's current account reflects the balance of trade earnings from foreign investments. It consists of a total number of transactions, including exports, imports, debts, etc. A deficit in the current account due to spending more and currency on imports than its earnings from exports causes depreciation. So, ichile pilo kwa bati, ichalonga chiche poso lupia sano lwingi. Pakushita ifipe nefintu kufialo fimbi. Ukuchila ifyo tuleshitisha kufialo fimbi. Chila lenga currency yabe ya sebana ilebwe la panshi. So ifipe fila kose la komutengo ilio tule tuwali loko la shita fionse kufialo fimbi. The balance of payment fluctuates with the exchange rates on its domestic currency. So, ngato kose local ashite fialo fimbi. If you naula currency. That's number 3. Number 4, government debt. In Congolese shakwato buteko, government debt is public debt or national debt owed by the government. A country with government debt is less likely to acquire foreign capital. leading to inflation. Foreign investors will sell their bonds in the market if the market predicts government debt is within a certain country. As a result, a decrease in the value of its exchange rate will follow. So, in Kongola, but abaleta endala mashabo okusa mukukitovu kwebona info balabutuka so nga babutuka bali abaleta endala mukufuma fyalo fimbi filalengo kwe bati inkongole shabuteko shilalengo kwe bati na exchange rate ile ekwerera ko pamulu dollar ile ekosa mutengo okushita. Number 5, it's something called the trade, terms of trade. Imi mfuanine ya mumishya yayo tu chitapo amakwebona fyalo fimbi. Related to the current output, accounts and balance of payments, the terms of trade is the ratio of export prices to import prices. A country's terms of trade improve if its export prices rise at a greater rate than its import prices. This results in higher revenue, which causes a higher demand for the country's currency and an increase in the currency's value. So, ngatuleshta ifipe pamitengo ikalambo kumfialo fimbi elo ifipe yeso tuleshtisha tulefunyamo fi ulupia ulunono yakila lenga currency yesu ukulabwelela panshi filalenga currency yachita yabipa. And number 6 twalapusha number 4 ni political stability and performance. A country's political state and economic performance can affect its currency strength. A country with less risk for political turmoil is more attractive to investors. As a result, drawing investment away from other countries with more political and economic stability. Increase in foreign capital in turn leads to an appreciation in the value of domestic currency. A country with sound financial and trade policy does not give any room or for uncertainty in the value of its currency. But a country prone to political confusion may see a depreciation in its exchange rate. So, nga muri chimfulumfuluma politics, muri nsanje, muri mpamane, muri nsanje ma politics yesu, muri nakafindwe, muri nokuchusha abantu ma politics ya chalo. Ama investors balabutuka, bailo babutukira kumono rupia lwabo. Na pia finifila chita affect currency. Chimbi ni recession. When a country experiences a recession, its interest rates are likely to fall, decreasing its chances to acquire foreign capital. As a result of its currency weakens in comparison to other currencies, therefore lowering the exchange rate. So it's very important to ensure that the economy at any given moment does not go deep into a recession. And we are coming off of a devastating recession. We'll talk about Zambia later, but we're just talking generally, if it's thicker, Puma currencies around the world. And finally, it's something called speculation. Speculation. If a country's currency value is expected to rise, something happens, and that makes people who deal with money expect a currency to rise. Investors will demand more of that currency in order to make a profit in the near future. As a result, the value of that currency will rise due to the increase in demand. With the increase in the currency value comes the rise in the exchange rate as well. So those are the 8 general factors that affect the exchange rate. Bachelor.
Thank you so much, Kasonso. So, Kasonso, how would you relate these critical factors to the relationship between the Zambian Kwacha and the exchange rates with convertible currencies in the last 3 decades? Thank you.
Last 3 decades, virtually, is a very long time. So I think we can't. We have to maybe take that question a little bit piecemeal and just comment on a few factors. In the last 30 years, I restrict the conversation to the last 30 years because before 30 years, we had a commandist economy, and this analyst did not have the years prior to that to can of course read from a book, but did not have the years there to offer constructive economic analysis. Maybe we have to borrow the wisdom of those who were there in those times, and we can bring some of them on this platform to come and also share their wisdom about that. But what I will say, Chilufya, at any given time, when the rates of inflation are high, the Zambian Kwacha depreciates very, very badly. You saw even just the most recent past we had, where the Kwacha had even reached a high pitch fever of 22 Kwacha, 22,000 Kwacha mundala mashakala, 22,000 Kwacha per dollar. Yeah, and every time the interest rates are high, the Kwacha always depreciates. And then also we've had times, for example, during the Monawasa government, when the country's current account had some money there in the reserves, when we got some money in there from our investments, we saw that for the longest part and the longest time, the Kwacha was stabilized. And every time those monies are depleted or used or spent on equity payments or just being used to service debt, we see the currency also depreciate. And we also, over the last 30 years, we saw that during the periods when of debt forgiveness, when the government had finally zero debt, we saw that the currency had probably the best life in the last 30 years. It is when government debt was at its minimum. Yes, yeah, but there is the thorny issue in the side of the Zambian economic and political life. It's the terms of trade. The terms of trade. Over the last 30 years, we introduced a policy called liberalization. But liberalization was not an intra-economy liberalization, but it was liberalization vis-a-vis the global economy. Proper research was not conducted to understand the global economy at the time. So liberalization vis-a-vis the global economy simply meant go get products from other countries and bring them here. So there was no particular care for the Zambian economy. We participated in the global economy as if it was under our control. So because of that, the terms of trade were poor. So in those early days, the currency began to depreciate at a faster rate. Probably the first 10 years of the last 30 years, we saw a lot of that because we canceled everything we could produce and everybody was ready to get out of the door to go and get a product across the border. So the terms of trade were also such that most of the goods would come into the country to avoid shortages. They would come into the country customs free or duty free. Those terms of trade impacted the value of the currency. And I believe that some of the value that was lost in those days, we have not yet recovered from that to this very day. Political stability. Yeah, our politics are not very bad, but we've had bad patches over the last 30 years. And every time there is tense political situations, we have seen the Kwacha respond in a very, very bad way. We saw this during the period when KK was imprisoned. We saw this when Hakainde Hichilema was put in a jail. And we saw this when the PF was trying to cling on to power. The Kwacha is a very sensitive young lady on the block in Central Africa. You don't bring political instability and violence and expect her to walk well and smile. She's a very, very sensitive individual. And then periods of recessions also, the Kwacha is very responsive to that. By the way, I think the last one about speculation is one that we had last year when it was highly anticipated that the UPND government would be taking over government and they were expected to be much more prudent and much more serious in handling money. We saw, coupled with, of course, other factors such as injections from foreign investments from the copper mines, we saw a strategic appreciation of the currency that we have not seen in the last 30 years, where we saw a dramatic appreciation of the currency. So that is how I would generally characterize the responsiveness of the Kwacha to the 8 factors over the last 8 years. Oh, 3 decades, I'm sorry.
Okay, that was fantastic, Dr. Kasonso. And you mentioned about the towards the elections in August 2021, the economy in Zambia deteriorated to the extent that the dollar was selling at 22. And after the election and into the final quarter, the dollar had fallen to 15 kwacha. And I think this is the lowest I've seen in the last 7-10 years. But within the last 5 weeks, the kwacha has depreciated by more than 3 kwacha per dollar. What is going on, Dr. Kasonso? Can the kwacha, this is the big question, can the kwacha stabilize in the long run? And what should be done for the kwacha to stabilize? And then hold that thought, Dr. Kasonso. I'll just give you an example. You've mentioned that one of the things that make the currency weaker is when the country imports almost everything. The UK imports literally everything, including bananas and tomatoes and onions. But the pound is the strongest currency in the world. What do they do differently? Thank you, Kasonso.
Thank you, sir. What does the UK export? One, we have to ask that question. We have to examine what the UK exports.
The UK doesn't export much, only financial services. Okay,
that's one. Two, we also have to look at the UK's foreign investment portfolio. What is the composition of the UK's foreign investment portfolio? And then three, we have to look at the historic financial position of the UK. Remember that at one point, the UK was a global financial empire. And they collected all the goodies from the rest of the world and established financial institutions that are part of the fiber of the global economy. So I would attribute the UK's strong financial position to historic investments. Nangundande mchiremba. Luliolu pia lwaibire ba King George akale barisungire bwino. Elo baluchita invest lwala yakula pano somebody achala. So those investments that have grown, those investments, for example, there are significant investments, UK investments in the United States. Part of the US economy are significant British investments. But the UK is not the only place. So if you go, maybe we need to take a study. We need to take a study on their current account, on their balance of payment, and the composition of where they get their money and their reserves, where they come from. But I can guarantee that it is the investments that they have made, over the hundreds of years in which they were in charge of the global economy. That could explain that. And then coupled with the prudent management of their reserves over the hundreds of years, the UK is involved in nearly every economy and plays a part in nearly every economy. So we need to study a little bit more, because I don't live there. You'd probably be more useful. You can give more useful pointers. So we'll take a study. But if you ask me about here, I can maybe say one or two things. So, but let me try to respond to some issues that you have raised here concerning this. We see that there was this dramatic appreciation of the kwacha over a short period of time, from 22 kwacha to 15 kwacha. Then over the last 5 weeks, we see it moved from there now to around 18. So within 5 weeks, we are looking at a depreciation of a little over 3 kwacha, 340, 350 kwacha, within a 5-week period. And if it carries on depreciating at that rate, you could see even jump back further, or even go beyond the 22 that we had over the last, but if the rate is consistent, because it's been a downward trajectory. Remember at the beginning of every show, Mr. Chilufya, you read for us those statistics to do with the currency exchanges. But every single week, it's a drip, it's a drop, it's a little drop, it's a little drop. But within 5 weeks, we have observed here at TV Bakwetu that it is now over 3 kwacha, a loss of value. So now, what could be going on? I'll take a bite at a few things. Number one, increased government spending in an ill-structured economy. Increased government spending in an ill-structured economy. You hear good news all the time. We have released these amounts to this group. Government is lowering its debt structure, public debt, internal, intra-country public debt. Government is lowering that. They're releasing money. But once that money is released, where is it going? What is it being spent on? So that is the problem. The problem is not that the people are being relieved. The problem is not that the government is wrong to spend that money. The problem is that the terrain in which the money is going is not properly structured. What do I mean by properly structured? What are those people spending that money on? The people are spending money on almost entirely imported products from other countries. So what is happening, Chilufya, is that whereas the rate of inflation is coming down due to the impact of the lowering exchange rate over the last several months, that spending on imported goods that are in the country is again beginning to put pressure on the currency because those goods must be replenished. You see what I'm talking about? Must be replenished because the people are not spending money on stuff they make. The people are spending money on stuff that they have to go and buy outside of the country. So that's what we mean by an ill-structured economy. Increased government spending in an ill-structured economy can cause one side the rate of inflation is coming down, the other side there is a rapid spike in the exchange rate. So inflation is going down, demand is rising, but demand is for mostly goods from other places. So that is putting pressure on the exchange rate. That's what's going on, number one. Two, the kwacha can, the kwacha can stabilize, but we must first restructure the economy, not just the debt. There is a lot of emphasis right now on restructuring the debt, restructuring the debt. The first thing that we need to restructure is the economy of Zambia. Remember last week, so we spoke about the drip, 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 drip economy. It's a bucket full of water every season, but by the time you get to the end, there is no water in the bucket. Why? It's because it's a drip, drip, drip economy. And this is the reason why it's very difficult to get the investors, after they sell their products from copper, to put all their money in a drip, drip, drip economy. Because at the end of it, they'll find that the money is not there. So there has to be proper safeguards of financial resources, better safeguard of financial resources in the Zambia. So the kwacha can stabilize, but we must first restructure the economy, not just the debt. Restructuring the economy means the first step is not to increase exports. You cannot take that as a first step. What you need to take as a first step is to reduce imports. Why is that very important? One, because according to Ansof's wisdom, you remember Mr. Ansof, the Russian scientist, the business scientist. According to Mr. Ansof, the first thing that you have to do with your existing products is to saturate the local market. So why? Because you are aware of the market in which you live before you can go and penetrate other markets. So what we have to do is we have to get a stake, a significant build products that can get a stake within our local markets. Because if we are incapable of even building products that can take a share within the local market, where on earth are we going to build a product that would take a share in another country's local market? So it's a no-brainer thing. It's simple business wisdom. the first thing we do is to reduce on imports. That's how we begin to restructure the economy. What can we build ourselves? What can we make for ourselves? Over the last 30 years, we have been like abana basumwine chiwa bonfio munkoyo family mwale no munkoyo mwale no munkoyo buno kuno kwina bonse mwalina but jamwa fyala abana banyuma basumwina kuri fanta ero yo fanta yakwe mukushitali onze so nomba abana kula, they can't survive without fanta, so you have to always go and buy fanta even when you have capacity to build munkoyo panganda. So that is what has happened to our country. We are importing things we need not to import, things we can make in our own country. That is what keeps the money first in the country. Then secondly, we have to increase the exports to where? Not exports in the air, exports to trading partners. I hope we can talk about this more as we go on. So that is how we can get into this thing of stabilizing the Kwacha in the long run.
No, that was fantastic, Kasonso. What adjustments can we make as a country to our terms of trade to strengthen the Kwacha? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, Chilufya. You said the terms of trade. Terms of trade, very important. When the president, His Excellency the President, mentioned the word economic diplomacy as a business strategy to run the country, I was very pleased. Now, I am curious and I'm very much interested in seeing this at play, not just in forming friendships around the world, but at play in negotiating different trade terms, particularly with our key trading partners. The reason why we import more than what we export is because of the terms of trade with our key trading partners. For example, let's take an analysis, Chilufya. Which countries are we getting stuff more from? Where do we buy our stuff more from? That's the starting point. And then those countries where we get their stuff from, how much do we take there? So if we find that, for example, if our key trading partner is South Africa, and South Africa is Zambia to South Africa, it's a very small economy. To South Africa, Zambia is very negligible. But South Africa to us may be the all determinant of the country's survival. Why? Because maybe South Africa exports to us 5,000 kwacha worth of goods, but we only export to South Africa 1,000 worth of goods. So what that means is that 4,000 kwacha every year, South Africa is some afokotora mumuli Zambia asenda every year, effortlessly. It's our key trading partner, but alesa ala fokotora mu 4,000. They don't need to do that. They don't depend on Zambia as a key, but just the way the trade is structured between the two countries is such that South Africa, let's have fokotora mu 4 pin, Yonse. Elo nomba imumpia mwala shifunya kwesa. Sheshine mpia South Africa sa muku fokotora mu. But you can't say, oh, South Africa leko kufokotora mu. No, because they supply you with things you need, some of the things you need. Of course, some of the things you don't need them. You're just lazy not to build them. So there are policies needed to calculate the impact of our trading partners on our own country. And maybe instead of South Africa, fokotolemo 4 pin, mwaikata kwechi kumochimo chawe, annually, mutupere kofe ichichi kumochimo, mune fokotolamo 3 pin, 2 pin na ifwe, tulesa mkufokotolamo. So mwa balance ko pano so mwabwesha kalaka pia mukabwesha ko annually over a period of 10 years ulu pia luingi wa Zambia. So we have to make those type of adjustments, incremental adjustments that can make an impact in the long term, stopping to import things we don't need and increasing our stake of what we trade, reducing trading on things we can make ourselves, or increasing our capacity to trade with our own trading partners. The other trading partners I want to mention is those who supply us with oil. I've lived in one of those countries and I've examined their financials. Where do we get the spare parts when the vehicles are dead? Where are we getting the oil? What do we take there? Part of economic diplomacy, I want to believe is part of the economic diplomacy is, but abantu balya nga muleba twalira $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. Look at the economy, find something that you can take there and negotiate a special trade deal and build something that back home, fund it. You can even get some of the investors from their own country to come and drop a chunk of money so you build capacity there. And then you use that to get your $1 billion muleti makulia. Na mfumo lepoka kofe $250,000 a year, na mumule ishtisha kumwawo. So lepoka, instead of 1 billion, wale senda kofe 750. You multiply that by a period of 5 years. Nish mwalipoka mulimulira relationship, mwalipoka $1 billion. That is how you grow an economy. That is how you restructure the trade agreements and relationships. So there is support relationships with those, and there is economic interdependability. It is not just sitting on our couch, lazy at home in Zambia, praying in tongues at church, and every time we see the president running on the street, Bali, Bali, Bali. No, we are going to stay the way it was if we don't make these critical changes. These changes are needed for the country to move. To move where? To move where?
Forward.
Forward ya Ninda forward.
Very important, Dr. Kasonso. You've actually touched on something I wanted to ask you about, restructuring the terms of our trade with our key trading partners. Is this the right time? And what are your thoughts, Dr. Kasonso?
There's a phrase that I learned that this needed to happen like yesterday. But truthfully, this is the right time. Why? Because in the country of Zambia, we have, for the first time in many years, a government that our key trading partners can trust. That's number one. They don't just like them, they can trust them. That is what you leverage, relationships with people. Business, but if you know this, you're an accountant. Businesses are relationships. This is the right time to do this. Pour the effort into debt restructuring, but most importantly, pour the effort into restructuring the Zambian economy. Stop the drip, 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 drip economy. Pour the energy and the effort into restructuring the Zambian economy. We are going nowhere if we continue to be 100% import-based economy. This is the right time. This should have been done like yesterday. Instead of us spending 10 years borrowing for structures to nowhere and from nowhere and to everywhere, we should have spent time restructuring the economy, increasing opportunities for the Zambian people. But we didn't do that. So it was 10 wasted years on structures. And the cost of infrastructure on the welfare of the people. Infrastructure is a critical role, but infrastructure is always on borrowed money. And you can't borrow if you can't pay. So you have to first create capacity in the people to pay. And then, along with that, you bring infrastructure as needed. You don't build infrastructure so that then in the future, when you get the resources from wherever they will come from, they will come and pay. That's not the way economic development is done. So economic development in a beautiful and bigger sense in the Republic of Zambia, we have to tackle this chronic problem of a fluctuating exchange rate, because that represents lost opportunities and it also represents gaps in terms of economic resources that we need to administrate the economy itself. this is the right time to undertake this.
Okay, that's fantastic, Kasonso. And we've come to a time where we're going to bring in Bakwetu family to ask some questions. And also we'll look at some questions from all our platforms, including YouTube. Dr. Barbara, can we see you, please? And if you've got a question, can you ask our learned Dr. Kasonso?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Patrick. Good evening, Professor Kasonso.
Good evening,
my question is, in regards to the fluctuations of the costing, the pricing, and empowering the Zambian population to import, to be able to do more for themselves. How can you narrow this education to the normal Zambian on the street? Because from the looks of it, there's been a detachment between you, the learned, and the normal Zambian person. So it's in medicine, it's a bit like you tell somebody you've got cancer and you'll be having this treatment, etc., etc. But they've got no clue what they're taking. They've got no clue what they're suffering from. So when they go home, they might not take the medicine, or they'll just, because they don't understand. So in terms of money, we have all those marketeers, all those people that, because on the ground, the very poor people do a lot of things. It's just that there's a disconnection between the people that are supposed to connect the markets to the people. For example, if you live in a developed country, around Christmas time, everybody knows that so much money has been spent. We can be given the percentages of around Christmas time. There was so much that was spent, because you can see everyone going into the shopping places. Whereas in our country, we just hear from people like yourself. You're saying money should come from here, but you can't see it from people. You don't know how it's being done. Even housing, you don't know, why is the plot in this area $2 million US, and just across the road, why is it? Where are these processes that are supposed to enlighten us? That's my contribution. I submit.
Thank you, Dr. Bab, for that brilliant question. The disconnect between the schooled and the seemingly unaware, the practitioner, let's call them the practitioner, let's not call them anything else, the economic practitioner on the ground, is maybe just because sometimes we are confined to the classroom or to the office, and they are there on the ground touching and pushing things. The one issue that can help solve that disconnect is public policy. For instance, certain things that government incentivizes and guards can shepherd and guard the people towards a certain economic activity. Let me give you a practical example. If government is incentivizing the growing of a certain product, let me say, okay, government wants to increase, let's say government wants to increase the export of soya beans by a certain number of tons. And government secures some money, and the people hear a rumor that the government is providing loans and supervising the administration of the loans and the growing of soya beans for this farming season. Babab nabashirima soya beans bakayafaya kwebala nokwemkongola shendala. So through that policy, government has shepherded people towards what? The growing of soya beans. So nabalabe nabali background balatefu nokuberenga tabale fako nokuyaberenga book fie so vese bonfuna my explanations yes kumfwa fie amangwe ngwe bata ubudeko bulefwa abantu abalelima soya beans. So people will gravitate to grow soya beans, and they grow soya beans in tons, and you increase the production of soya beans and export that soya beans and recover that money over a period of time. So there is a role in which public policy and public investments can play in shepherding people to understand these complex concepts towards doing the right thing. Is that helping? Is that helping to answer the question?
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But who instigates these policies? Who is supposed to initiate the policies? Is it easier? Because from what you're saying, in order for a country to develop, there's supposed to be a period of maybe dictatorship where you just say this is going to happen. Or is there a negotiation that's supposed to happen where different people agree? Because these things that you've mentioned, I've heard them like in the last 15 years, but it doesn't happen.
Yes. Actually, in silver bullet, mwaita dictatorship. I like a phrase that I heard some time back. It's called benevolent dictatorship. Now, the key word there to underline is benevolent. I also heard a phrase called a stick and carrot. The purpose of government is to lead, to provide leadership. And leadership should also be firm. It's leadership no. Part of ubutungulu shikukosa pongata mwachitechi kwala rewards nama punishments. Rewards and punishments. A purpose of government. Rewards nama punishments. So whereas opposition but within the structure of doing things, there should be there is government's purpose is rewards and punishments. Bapanga policy often in statutory instrument. Wakonka, baba rewarded, abashikonkere kuba panic. So I wouldn't call it necessarily dictatorship, but just seriousness in implementation of rewards and punishments.
Dr. Kasonso, thank you for that answer. I hope Barbara now is happy about your answers. We've got a question from not just a viewer, but one of our Bakwetu anchors, or presenters, Linda Banks. Professor K, why is Zambia such an import-driven economy, despite the fact that we have vast natural resources and favorable climate? Thank you, Dr. Kasonso.
My ballpark, next ballpark, actually, if you have naine, they pick up a bumbari morini because naine win the bumbari Zambia. She don't call it Ichikumumuri in Soria Zambia. You for Zambia, to quarter number one, Ubunangani. To quarter Ubunangani. To quarter son, Ubunangani. Two, for Zambia to a mama shortcut. So ngachako kuliko shortcut yo iniyo tuwala putula tatufua yo kupita kumbali. So imports are very good for people. Abachifo which tile fintu elwali temwako na shortcut. But ili ingirine icha number 3 bala kwata ko sana olupia. Icha number 3 echo tatua kwata. Tatua kwata sana olupia. So echo tufuile ko chitefu kuma na fyaka pise ntubombeshe because ukubombeshe tu alikwata capacity. Umwina Zambia ona ishi bafya uli onse. Ngai ngila fenangu ni muno mu diaspora isa mufyalo funo tubombesha. Na bari mwale muna kusukuru kwati bakopo kuno bali ama na bari mwale muna kwati ni bakanku ni kuzambia kuno ni bakana abesa. So it's an issue of the environment no kutemwako uwa nalale no mulele. So ngachako batubuteko watu kuminkanya pamufwe na Zambia wapanga kufeno notusha twakwe bati watu chitako focus twalikuwa capacity ya kubombesha no kuchinje chalo cheso but nga takuli ubutungulushi icha last chana cha focus upon emphasize Linda Banks butungulushi it's lack of leadership on those issues. Leadership tekwe for kutungula abantu kwa fyampe fikote demonstrated leadership abantu abachitapo efintu from areas ifa kwa bati abantu kuti balolesha kwati ali chitifi okay na ifunga ngatwa konke fyale chita bimina fukutu asaba ko bwino. So demonstrated leadership is very good. That's why we are curious about His Excellency na work product yabo, fruit of his life can act as an inspiration for many people to even work harder. But most importantly, translate that into public policy. Ya kolonganya abekala chalo. Tete tule chitama toothpick mwebekala chalo. Tete tule chitana nguvunanga ni bwashani. Fimbi fitu wale panga kale Mzambia na ngufia toa ishibino kuchatifia substandard. You know, kwali bana business process re-engineering kuti mwaya pa factory mwachinje fe mule panga fionse mwambo kupanga ine quality ya product ya kufuma kuchalo chimbi rather than ukwisala industry elo nomba mwaisula ma borders ati mwakulali amufero mwaleta vyo utufia kulia utufia findifile fuma kufia fimbi takuwa abadi economic development ichitikefyo akachila kambushi kasengula hapo kekere nomba akachila kambushi kadi sileko kusengula hapo kekere wa Zambia kafe mku kongola shuwa nokuya mukusende fipefi yabe ni kuntwanika nokuisa mukuleta mchala.
Thank you, Kasonso. We've been joined by another Bakwetu family member. Lomkelevai, welcome. I'm going to ask you some questions later. Let me just read some few questions. Let me just bring in some few questions from our viewers today, and then I'll give you time to ask your question or make your comments. Dr. Kasonso, we've got Agatha Lloyd, one of our viewers on Facebook. Thanks for the topic. My question is, we do have economic gurus in Zambia. Why do we just tell people tighten your belts when I do not even know how, and I do not have a belt?
Yeah, that's
a
good one. Economic guru guys unkumweva tighten your seat belt kumweva tikavioko tighten your belt kutaulete belt twala tighten belt shan no na kuno, you know, in societies where people work hard, opportunities hapa kuchira work hard piyala hapo, you know. For example, I'm trying to restructure my life in many different ways. And if you're never at this point in my life, fingi. So, this past week, na 70 hours. It's different opportunities that are available within my world that allows me to do that. So, in other words, if you but national service. Mule balipirira na fyonzi batwale ku national service basambira ama skills kula kwini if you know bali mefima bali fikulu basambira ama skills yakuya elimina abene ya bali fuma kulya fye bali elimina kulya ndalama nishimo funishemo mulya only profit mwabapela ko shimwe ndalama baya tampire fya kuchitabene then mwabeba tighten your belt ufunye ma products apo twala kuchita mu markets kwa kuyambushye. That makes sense. Not tighten your seat belt if you have kuleta bakwete apa kuleta bakwete na opportunity bakwete. Ke seat belt ulevo kuipaya bantu yo. Tighten the seat belt yo lelanda.
Dr. Kasonso, the other angle on that question was, we've got too many educated people in Zambia, economists. How come our economy is still bad? I think that's the other angle I saw that question.
Your question
and so much corruption.
The leadership. But your question, leadership. Ngana mkwata leadership. Everything rises or falls on leadership. Ngana mkwata leadership. Akabula bale na basambiri abachita match bambya babika palia. Notuko leta patutunshi once bale landa bambi bafuri balande ma boardroom. Bambi bafuri bale landa nishina beka tolukaso. Ero bale analyze inflation badinji bale limu musalo. Ero bale analyze inflation ya musalo. So it's the issue is leadership. It is not that we don't have the talent, we don't have the skills. If we in Zambia tuliva mano sana ngamwa tufunya fe no komwa sa tuweka na mapanga kula bano kuchita fe na thrive wino. Yeah, so leadership fail to lady lako fe kwebati. Tumoni ubutunguru shinangu milombea tulombe leadership ilangi olukala lapa batungulule batite place abantu ko balingiri okuba icharo chiri apuntanye.
I've got another question from Facebook. Nicholas Mutalama. I think I've seen Nicholas is a regular viewer, and I hope by Nicholas you send us Amastars because Mlatamba Lyonse. Eh? But Nicholas, there's nothing like free lunch, by Nicholas. Please send those stars. Thank you. Dr. Kasonso.
Why?
But Nicholas Valera, that goes back to the past before independence. The colonial administration focused on extraction and not settlement. Therefore, no institution nor policy was advanced to foster development, let alone diversification. Before you answer that one, Dr Kasonso, I don't know why Zambia was used only for that, because what they were doing is, if you look at the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, they were taking resources from Nyasaland and Rhodesia and Zambia, northern Rhodesia. They were developing southern Rhodesia. So this guy is saying the foundation the colonial masters left was bad. It was just about extraction, not developing the country, not developing the industries, no value adding. Because if you look at Zimbabwe and you compare to Zambia, the infrastructure that's why Zimbabwean economy can be so bad. But the infrastructure is so powerful. You know, the base, they've got a very strong base to revive their economy quicker than us. So what do you think about that question?
Yeah, now you for argument.
Yeah, because our president has been talking about value adding. And this guy is saying, we're just extracting, we're not adding value. So the colonial masters were just extracting copper, no value addition.
Yeah, but that is more than 50 years ago. We could have corrected that. Now you for argument. Another one you for muni. Valabe no colonial master bali kwetu muchushisha. Bale fyampasa nefcourt no kumfya bafyashi besu n'abantu besu kwati basha mukyalo kyabo. So ile kwali okupoka obuntungwa kwali ati bwana lale mbata bakala bomba ifyo bale bomba anda bwana kwati basha. So filafine muno bunangani bwayingirira n'okushibombesha because bali poko obuntungwa. So I've heard that argument also in the other way, that the independence is also what brought in the disease of taking for granted work to the degree that we didn't focus on what we can do for ourselves. We focused on the fact that we have been liberated from everything to do with colonialism, including work. So yes, the colonial masters, the colonial regime had its negative impact. But this time around, we are so far removed from it, we can no longer continue to use it as an excuse. Thank you.
Dr. Kasonso, on that, you've been following the program. Have you got any questions, comments for our learned doctor?
Dr. Kasonso, good evening.
Yes, how are you today? Good evening.
Thank you. I'm very fine. I'm getting there. Corona is not a good. It's not a good thing to have. It can actually take away your time and your strength.
We thank God.
Also the life. Yes. Well, doctor, good evening. Well, Dr. Barbara, long time. It's good to see you. Well, I've heard your program. I was following, and until I jumped onto something and I came back. But it was amazing. It's very clear, Dr. Kasonso, that we have. And I was actually about to ask the very question that a gentleman here asked we have this kind of human resource, knowledge, intellectuals, and yet our country is still wallowing under abject poverty. And you answered very well to talk about leadership, but it's not always about leadership also. It's about also the culture that we have inculcated in ourselves as Zambians. Just because we are Zambian, we love our country. The issue of us being jealous of one another just because someone is advancing in life. And we smile, we show them teeth that we are happy for them, yet in our hearts, we are so devastated. We don't even know we are trying to distract, to bring them down. These are the things, these are the attributes of what we see today, the greediness that is happening today, taking place in our country. We lie too much and we hide behind the so-called, I'm sorry to say you are the preacher, the Bible. You may even think that Zambia is one of the best economy in the world. But go and see what we do behind closed doors. I'm telling you, it's terrible, devastating. We should change the mindset. And some of these mindsets are inculcated. They are enshrined from some of these repugnant Imiambo. Some of these traditional cultures, they are the ones that are making us to hate our brothers and sisters and forward and advance our selfish needs. And that's why we see corruption. People can go and supply drugs, fake drugs, or expired drugs. Who does that? It's the person that has a very different upbringing, a different mindset. So if we can only change that, where wasanga wallet mumusevo, why dollar? You have to take it, you check whose name is on this wallet, watwala, watpela, or you call. You don't get a dime. Yet we call ourselves Christians. We have a rotten moral decay in our country.
Just hold that thought.
Coming back to...
Can we all mute ourselves unless you're talking? Only Kasonso, you should be.
Thank you for that, man. Coming back to our economical system that is happening, that has been up and down in our country. I'm not an economist, but anyone can see that we have the potential to actually make it in our country. But the problem is the very thing, the greediness, the very thing, the laziness. Ngawalanda kwati independent something. When you know that you are supposed to do, it is your duty. You must be patriotic to your country. But instead, we choose to look the other way around and wait for the right time to start condemning or blaming. That is what we are good at. So we should do away with this kind of culture. Avena Zambia, Nami Papat. And already you can tell that from the little resources that the previous government left, look at how this new government that has a vision. Look at what they have done within 5 months, within their probationary period. Look at what they're doing to us. Honestly, who are we to start negating when somebody is trying to put money and food on our table and start calling them names and claim that they are being persecuted? You cannot do such things. Give credit where it is due. Somebody has come to save us. Somebody who has the heart, who has suffered at the hand of unfairness and unruly injustices, has come to say, look, you have persecuted me enough, and I'm going to forgive those who persecuted me, but I'm not going to let the law, to let them scot-free. Let the law take its own course. Yeah. So when they are being visited for their economical distraction, they should not come here on the fora or go anywhere and start crying persecution. Persecution when you created this problem to yourselves.
Thank you, Mkeleba. That was very important. Let's stick to the point.
I will stick to the problem. I will stick to the issue because the Zambia is not. It's not about. We can talk. I'm telling you, it's good. Kasonso is giving us a doctor is giving us is enlightening, educating. transforming the knowledge that he has into some of us who had no clue about the economical issues. But today we can tell that we don't have the heart for our country. There are very few individuals such as Hakainde Chileba and Mwanawasa who had the heart for the country. Not to have walala, but surely we don't make such kind of useless
Thank you
leaders in
so
our
much,
country.
Mamkelebai. Yeah, but Dr. Kasonso, before I'm going to allow you to make closing remarks. We've got our brother here, Richard Walia, who is he's not part of the Bakwetu family, but he's one of our viewers. But Richard, if you got a question for Kasonso, please.
What's the question, sir? Good evening, our Mr. Patrick Chilufya.
Good evening, Magwaja. If you got a question for Kasonso on the
No,
topic,
I haven't gotten the question.
Namkwata question yako asukaba yako ipshaba Kasonso because Kasonso.
No, I haven't. I just wanted to appreciate our comrade, my elder brother, Mr. Mkrevai, for his contribution. I normally follow this page so much, and what my older brother was saying, he has spoken very well. There are people who are not appreciating what the European government has done within short period of time. People, there is jubilation all over to say there is free education. And these things just happened during Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. From that time, there was no free education. But see, all over when I was trying to look for the place for these nieces of mine, all the places was fully occupied. And someone who has to appreciate, we have just to need to appreciate. But we see the bitterness because some PF, they still live in denials. They are still bitter. They can even kill. The way our comrade, my older brother, Mr. Mkreva was saying. But muchibemba tulandati Indoshi ngali kupampana nango English indeke nango whatever good things you can do for a witch, they are going to kill you. So these people, I think it is good. The European government, they have to get rid of those people and let the law face them, because we have seen they have. I know the president has got that heart. So there's so much tolerance. I can give an example. When we had a by-election in Kabwata, there was free and fair. There was no tear gas there. Nothing. But if it was a PF regime, it was Hiroshima Nagasaki there. People would have died there. But we thank God. And every Zambian, every meaning Zambians, they have to appreciate this leadership. Because this man, Mr. Hakainde Chilema, indeed is a heaven sent. And we have to appreciate that. We have to pray for him. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard Walia, for that comment. Kasonso, we've got another question from one of our regular viewers, Arnold Changala. Tourists have made Kenya one of the strongest economies in Africa, with millions visiting each year, while Zambia, with one of the 7 wonders of the world, Mosotunya, Victoria Falls, and equally amazing wildlife, but only attracts thousands of tourists. If we can't see what God has already blessed us with, IMF won't help us. Kasonso, that's the last question from our viewers, and then Mkeleba spoke, but Richard Walia spoke.
Can I just say one point,
and then Barbara can speak also, and then and then closing remarks, 5 minutes. But Barbara, 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, everybody, and thank you for all the contributions. I just wanted to say that before I hand on to Kasonso, I just wanted to understand from where Kasonso was coming from. What he was trying to explain to us is the economic impact of where we are going, because we've only got one Zambia. So now we are appreciating what the government is doing, we are appreciating free education, but for us to continue in that free education, we need that money for the next generation and the next generation. That means we now have to pull our socks up, we have to start work. So the minute of the politics of the getting into power, now we have to get to the politics of money.
Yes.
So we have to change our mindset we now have to find ways of making money. We now have to stand together of how are we going to make more dollars for our children. You want your nieces to go to school. You want your own children to go to school. For them to be in that education, for that money to come from the government, it has to come from somewhere. And that's where we are trying to get to with the knowledge of Kasonso. So I submit.
Kasonso, before Tamulaisa, Barbara is saying that we no longer Wunkole. We're no longer in opposition. We're no longer under slavery. That's why we PF. Tulete kanomba. So let's not behave as slaves. Let's behave like kings and queens to take a chalo. And Barbara made a very important point at in free education, they're free, ni subsidy. The government managed to subsidize. Where does the government get that money from? We need to find that money. So which means we all need to work hard to contribute to the GDP, to the coffers, so that the government can continue with free education. Over to you, Kasonso. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Walia. Thank you, Kelevai, and thank you for everyone's contribution. First of all, we're political people, and these changes we're talking about are political changes. Politics will help us change, and politics will help us get there. Yes, Kelevai made some important points concerning the attitude of the people, and then he angled Damalegen Yao Pariba PF. And then that sparked a little political moment. It made me just a little watery. But not to say it's a diversion, yes, but Dr. Baba zeroed in on a very important point. We who soldiered for this change must now transition from opposition to government. How are we going to govern the Commonwealth of the Republic of Zambia? The Commonwealth of the people of Zambia, called the Republic of Zambia. So we have to transition from Bumposa Mabwe, number two, offering public service, either through those of us who are abaperako ekyabo ekyakufunda ekyakulondolola or bambi abaperako ekyabo ekyakusako skills nayambi. So we have to deploy every voice and every resource to support our country with every gift that we have towards this government that we supported and treasured, that they are there. We also have to be very objective and see the necessary gaps and breathe life into there, or highlight things that they should be looking at. That is very important. Bachangala balanda pari inda lamasha tourism ku Kenya and nefutwari kwata ifutwa kwata Zambia. Of course, we can learn kuwena Kenya, and that is very important, and I also appreciate that. But you know, the other thing I wanted to comment, Pafia Bachangala, Kenya is not just tourism dollars. I would like to remind you that Kenya, through lineage and family, produced a president of the United States. And that is the biggest lobbies they have for multiple investments in technology that they have and in other spheres beyond tourism. So it's not a one-size thing. It's not a one thing. Yeah, and also there is only so much the IMF can do. But the IMF is also a necessary institution in taking certain corrective steps within the economy. So today, we came to address the issue of economic development in the face of chronic currency exchange rate fluctuations. We are worried that the exchange rate isn't looking stable. Over the last 5 weeks, the dollar rate, the kwacha to the dollar rate, has deteriorated or depreciated by more than 3 kwacha per dollar in just the last 5 weeks. So we are attributing some of that change to structural issues within the economy. And we looked at the different things that causes currency exchanges to deteriorate or to improve. And we identified areas where the current government, the New Dawn government, can help to push and create impetus so that they can strengthen the kwacha. At the moment, we don't want to stabilize the kwacha because structurally, the kwacha is not standing on strong footing without a production base and without a strong export and foreign investment portfolio for Zambia, investment abroad. What the kwacha needs is to be strengthened. We identified what needs to be done for the kwacha to be strengthened, both in the short term and in the long term. And we're excited about other shows that are coming up, and thank you for watching us today. Batotela sana na mutamba kwa kawunkola nyaka ngana mkwata na fimbi fi kushona ngufia kulanda po kuti tuli bantu benu kuti mwatu tumina question tutwaya suka twafairisha mansa zingara tukwete. And thank you again. Please remember to send us stars. Muba ku YouTube mutumia na super chats. Tatumila videko. We'll look at other things, other questions in other shows that are coming. I also want to thank my colleagues from TV Bakwetu, Barbara and Mkelavai, for showing up and just being around tonight to be part of this show. It's always a pleasure and an exciting thing to come here and share some of the gifts that God gave us and some of the information that we so candidly desire to make public knowledge to every citizen who has ears to hear. Thank you, Bachelu. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr Kasonso. You always come when we need you. Thank you so much, Mkelevai. I'm glad you're recoupling, you're recovering. Thank you, Dr. Barbara. Even though you've run away, but Richard, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Our viewers, thank you so much for your support, for viewing. And we're coming to an end of this special edition of Kasonso One-on-One with Dr. Kasonso every Monday at 9:30. You're welcome next Monday. Goodbye. God bless Zambia. Bye for now.